The first time I crossed the threshold into her dimly lit world, I was met with a chill that seeped into my bones, wrapping around me like a forgotten memory from a distant winter. The house was old, its walls steeped in stories untold, and the air carried a sense of mystery that was almost palpable. "It's not the only thing cold here," she whispered, her voice a smoky whisper that curled around the dimly lit room like the flickering candle flames casting shadows on the walls. The sound of her voice was like velvet, smooth and deep, with a hint of something that could have been amusement or warning. I was there to fix the heater, but the way she looked at me, as if I were there to fix something else entirely, made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. "My name is Alex Turner, 32, a maintenance technician by trade, but often referred to as a fixer, a problem solver, or a jack of all trades. My life was a series of calls and appointments, each day blending into the next as I moved from one task to another. But never had I been called to solve a problem quite like this." The landlady, Elaine Collins, was a woman of indeterminate age, though I guessed late 40s, with an air of mystery that seemed almost tangible, as if her very presence could alter the atmosphere in a room. She lived alone in this old suburban house, a place that seemed more alive with secrets than with warmth. Elaine herself was an enigma, her appearance a study in contrasts. Her robe, elegant yet simple, was tied loosely around her, but the way she held it suggested it was more armor than comfort. Her eyes were dark and enigmatic, like deep pools that held secrets untold. They followed me as I knelt beside the radiator, the metal groaning beneath my touch like it was reluctant to reveal its secrets, as if the house itself was conspiring to keep its mysteries hidden. "What model is this?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence with a casualness I didn't feel. I was more trying to fill the silence than out of necessity. My hands, usually steady, fumbled with the tools, the cold seeping into my fingers and making them clumsy. Elaine tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady and searching. "Do your hands always shake like that?" Her question was both innocent and loaded, the kind that made you question yourself, your intentions, your very presence in the room. I paused, looking up at her, caught off guard by the directness of her observation. "Not usually," I replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but the words felt heavy in the air between us, a tangible reminder of the tension that lay beneath the surface. She didn't respond immediately, her eyes lingering on my hands before moving to meet mine. The silence stretched between us, a taut line that threatened to snap at any moment. Finally, I turned back to the radiator, focusing on the task at hand. The familiar hum of warm air finally began to flow through the pipes, a small victory in the midst of an uncomfortable tension that seemed to permeate the room. Elaine moved to close the window, the draft ceasing as she shut out the world beyond the glass. She stood there for a moment, backlit by the streetlights, her silhouette framed by the pale glow. Then she turned to face me again, positioning herself between me and the exit, a subtle yet unmistakable move that sent a shiver down my spine. It was as if she was both inviting and detaining me, a silent challenge I didn't quite understand. "You fixed it?" she stated, though her words felt less like a compliment and more like an acknowledgement of something deeper, something unspoken that simmered just beneath the surface. "Yeah, it should be good now," I replied, standing up, feeling the weight of her gaze on me like a physical presence. My mind screamed at me to leave, but my feet seemed rooted to the spot, as if the room itself was reluctant to let me go. I made to leave, taking a step toward the door, but she didn't move. Instead, she leaned against the wall, arms folded, her posture relaxed yet commanding, a contrast that seemed to define her very essence. "It's late," she said, her voice soft yet firm, a melodic cadence that suggested both invitation and command. "You should stay for a drink." I hesitated, every instinct telling me to decline, to walk away from whatever strange pull this woman and her home had on me. Yet, there was an undeniable pull, an unspoken invitation in her eyes that made refusal seem impossible. Okay, I heard myself say, my voice betraying a curiosity that matched the nervous flutter in my chest. She moved to the kitchen, her movements graceful, each step deliberate and measured. The soft clink of glass and the splash of liquid broke the silence, filling the room with a domesticity that felt strangely out of place. I followed, drawn to her presence like a moth to a flame, the warm air from the newly repaired heater creating an intimate cocoon around us. Elaine handed me a glass, her fingers brushing mine, a fleeting touch that seemed to linger long after she pulled away, a silent promise or perhaps a warning. To warmth, she toasted, her eyes never leaving mine as we clinked glasses. The drink was smooth, warming my throat and tempering the chill that had settled within me, a welcome balm to the unease that had been gnawing at my insides. As we stood there, the silence between us shifted, becoming something less tense but no less charged. The air was thick with possibilities, each one more enticing and terrifying than the last. "Do you always offer drinks to the men who come to fix things?" I asked, half joking, though the curiosity was genuine, a thread of hope woven through my words. Elaine smiled, a slow, enigmatic curve of her lips that spoke of secrets and stories untold. "Only the ones who seem like they could use it," she replied, her eyes twinkling with amusement, a spark that lit the room in a way the candles never could. I laughed softly, the sound unfamiliar in the stillness of the house, an echo of something forgotten. "And how many of those have there been?" "Not as many as you might think," she said, her tone turning serious, her gaze steady and unwavering, a promise of truths yet to be revealed. The weight of her words settled over me, making me acutely aware of the ground we were treading, a delicate dance on the edge of something profound and unknown. There was something intoxicating about the way she moved, the way she spoke, as if every gesture, every word was deliberate, meant to draw me further in, deeper into the web she seemed to weave with such ease. As the night wore on, the distance between us seemed to shrink, the boundaries blurring in the dim light of the room. We talked about everything and nothing, our words weaving a tapestry of connection that felt both fragile and unbreakable. But behind the laughter and the conversation, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, something that both excited and terrified me, a siren call to which I was helpless to resist. At one point, she reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm, a touch that sent a jolt through my entire being, a spark that ignited something long dormant. "You're different, Alex," she said softly, her eyes searching mine, a question and a declaration all at once. "Different how?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid to break the fragile moment that hung between us. She hesitated, as if weighing her words, measuring their impact before speaking. "You see things differently. You don't just fix things. You understand them." Her words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with a truth I hadn't quite realized until that moment. I nodded, unable to find the words to respond, but knowing that what she said was undeniably true, an insight that cut through the layers of my carefully constructed facade. The moment stretched, a fragile thread connecting us, and for a brief, terrifying moment, I wondered if I was about to step over a line that could never be uncrossed. But then, as if sensing my hesitation, Elaine stepped back, giving me space to breathe, to think, to decide. The night wore on, the shadows lengthening as we stood on the precipice of something undefinable. I knew that staying any longer would be a risk, one that could unravel everything I held dear. Yet, there was a part of me that wanted to stay, to see where this unexpected connection might lead, to explore the depths of whatever it was that simmered between us. But as much as I wanted to linger, the reality of the situation loomed large, a sobering reminder of the life I had outside these walls, responsibilities and commitments that anchored me to a world far removed from this one. The thought of losing everything I had worked for was a sobering reminder of the stakes involved, a tether that pulled me back to reality. "I should go," I finally said, my voice tinged with regret, the decision both relieving and heartbreaking in its finality. Elaine nodded, a flicker of disappointment crossing her features before she masked it with a smile, a gesture of understanding that spoke volumes. "Thank you for fixing the heater," she said, her voice laced with a sincerity that warmed me more than the alcohol ever could, a quiet acknowledgement of what had passed between us. I nodded, taking a step toward the door, each movement a conscious decision to walk away from what might have been. But before I could leave, she reached out, her hand resting lightly on my arm, a touch that promised both goodbye and possibility. "Take care, Alex," she said softly, her eyes holding mine in a gaze that spoke volumes, a silent wish for what could not be. "You too, Elaine," I replied, my voice a quiet promise, a hope for her and for myself, that we might find what we were seeking, even if it wasn't with each other. As I stepped out into the cool night air, I felt a strange sense of loss, as if leaving her behind meant leaving a part of myself. But there was also a sense of relief, a reassurance that I had made the right choice, even if it meant walking away from something that could have been a path not taken. The drive home was a blur, the quiet hum of the engine a backdrop to the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions swirling within me. I knew that what had happened tonight would linger in my mind, a memory etched into my consciousness like a vivid dream, haunting and beautiful in its impossibility. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking about Elaine more often than I cared to admit. Her enigmatic presence haunted my thoughts, a reminder of the night that had changed everything, a ghost of what might have been. Yet, there was also a sense of peace, an understanding that what had happened was a moment suspended in time, never to be repeated, a perfect imperfection. Elaine and I never spoke of that night again, but the dynamic between us had shifted, a silent agreement that lingered in the air whenever we crossed paths. Our interactions were cordial, even friendly, but there was an unspoken understanding that we had both stepped to the edge and chosen to turn back, a mutual respect for the boundaries we had drawn. In time, the intensity of that night faded, replaced by a new normal, one that was defined by mutual respect and a quiet acknowledgement of what might have been. The connection we had forged remained, a subtle undercurrent that added depth to our interactions but never threatened to spill over into something more, a delicate balance we both maintained. Life moved on, as it always does, and though the memory of that night lingered, it became a part of my past, a reminder of the choices we make and the paths we choose. And though the story remained unresolved, it was not without hope. A hope that maybe, in another time, another place, things might have been different, that paths not taken could lead to new beginnings. In the end, Elaine and I continued to live our separate lives, bound by a shared history and a fragile understanding that transcended words. And though the door to that other possibility remained closed, the possibility itself was enough, a testament to the power of connection, even in its most fleeting form, a reminder of the warmth that can be found even in the coldest of places.